Welcome to the Dr. Fantastic and Thunder Show. We've got as you know, we bring you information that's going to help your body, your mind, and the planet. And today we have Marius Louw, who is a organic. Is that what it is?
Biodynamic, which is organic, a highest standard of organic farming.
Okay, so biodynamic agricultural farming. So, Marius, tell the listening audience, the novice that doesn't know a clue about this, which I've never heard about it either, give us an education on biodynamic agricultural farming.
Okay, I'll give you a basic breakdown. In 1924, this philosopher, philanthropist, Rudolf Steiner in Germany gave a lecture to 300 organic farmers who were seeking methods of replenishing the nutrients in their soil and vitality and dealing with diseases and pests and what have you. And so he came and gave 8 lecture series over 3 days. And in that lecture series, he gave directions to these farmers on how to make what he called preparations. There's 10 of them, and 9 of them are for the balancing of compost. And each one has a particular way. First, it's based on herbs, and they're composted in a certain way that they go through an alchemy that makes them balancing certain properties like phosphorus, nitrogen, calcium, and making it so when these preparations are put onto your compost, which has been applied to the soil, which he considers as intelligent, responds by creating perfectly balanced plants. His philosophy is with plants is that the soil is actually encouraging the plants that would do best to grow there. So if you have weed plants growing there, it's because the soil actually needs the nutrients that those weed plants have. And so that's why it's encouraging those plants to grow there. And if your plants aren't doing well, it's because they need certain nutrients to do well. And when they get those nutrients, you're not going to have a weed problem because your plants will do well.
I always heard that when you grow the same crop over and over again in the same field, it will diminish certain nutrients, and that way you should always switch your crops. Is there any validity to that?
Absolutely. Because, the crop rotation, because certain crops, if you plant them in the same place year after year, the disease pests are in the soil, the nutrients that plant needs are taken out of the soil. So when you are planting corn in the same place year after year after year, they're having to pump in all the nitrates to feed that plant. Well, the nitrates would also feed the weed plants too, because the weed plants are trying to replenish that soil. So then they got to put in herbicide to stop it, and then they have to coat the seed with the herbicide so that plant will be immune to the herbicide that they dose on the soil, and so all the other plants will die. The problem with this is, though, that the surrounding plants eventually will survive the dosing of the poison, and then they'll become immune to it, and they're actually spreading this pollen of now poisonous pollen. Anyhow, getting back onto the organic thing, these preparations are used on the compost. They balance it so that your soil is maintained healthy. And then there's one of the preparations that's actually quartz crystal that is crushed into a powder and then composted for the summer in a certain way that gives it the properties that when you mix it up with water and spray it in the atmosphere on your plants, it assimilates sunlight. It allows the plants to assimilate the sunlight that they will grow twice as fast.
Wow, that's news to me.
Yes, and also this silica is also extremely beneficial to spray in the area around. They love it. It makes them very resilient and healthy, and creates a harmonious atmosphere. It's something that needs to be used more and studied. But the biodynamic movement is actually large in this country. There was some German farmers that came here in the 60s and started it up, and there's now there's a college in Wisconsin and in California in Sacramento. I think it's called Michael Fields, the one in Sacramento. And then
that was my next question. I was going to ask you, what college are there? Is this being taught in any colleges? So you answered my question there. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Now these colleges were usually started up by farmers who were doing this, and then they were having apprentices coming there, and so the need is building up. However, in this country, the whole educational system is pretty much controlled by chemical agriculture and
Monsanto, probably.
Monsanto, they pretty much run the show, and you try to talk to them anything about organics, and they'll usually laugh at you. So it really has to be something that is done. There has to be a need. People have to demand the organic food at a reasonable price because it's not subsidized like the other foods.
Well, the organic,
which is why they can make them cheaper.
My wife buys organics now, and it seems to be growing more and more in the markets. People are seeing it as a healthy alternative. But is Monsanto against the organic movement? I don't know much about that.
Well, Monsanto is completely petroleum-based. When you apply even the nitrate fertilizers to soil, you kill off all the microorganisms in the soil that hold the humus and keep the if you look at the soil as a living organism, an intelligent organism, if you put poison on it and kill it, now it's a sand pit that you have to keep on adding fertilizer to in order to grow the crop you want. The way you can turn it around with biodynamics is a preparation you can spray on these fields, and I'm sure if you use frequencies on these sprays as well to help neutralize the chemicals that are in the soil. These fields, they spray them and then they seed them with grass, and then they graze it with cows. Cows have mycelium in their intestine, and that's actually mycelium is the intelligence of the soil. It's the mushroom spore, basically for all mushrooms, and it runs through runs through all living soil throughout the earth. Under the right climatic conditions, just about any mushroom on Earth can pop up anywhere. So cows have the miracle of having mycelium in their stomach. If they're on a grass diet, the mycelium is quite prevalent, and as they're grazing and eating and dropping manure, their manure is actually not only replenishing the nutrients, but replenishing the microbacteria mycelium spore in the soil. And so cows grazing the land can replenish the land. Over 3 years, it'll be back to health again.
How do people find out about this movement, and is there a website that shows you the differences between the crops that they're grown with or without this system?
Oh yes, they've done lots of field studies. There's actually on the East Coast in Virginia, There's a place called Josephine Porter Institute. They make all these preparations so that backyard gardeners can just buy them without having to make them. But the idea behind biodynamics is that a farmer is completely sustainable, making all his fertility, balancing his farm himself from his knowledge.
Well, this is the exact kind of information that Thunder and I want to share with the world.
All right. Well, on the East Coast, Josephine Porter Institute, and on the West Coast, it's Michael Fields College.
That's wonderful news. Well, I want to thank you for stopping in. I know this is an impromptu interview and you have other things to do, but thank you for sharing that information with us. And we will talk further on the subject.
Thank you very much. My pleasure, sir.
Bye-bye.